So Apple's been having to apologize for its Macs quite a lot in the past couple years, whether that's because of the keyboards or because of the throttling issues with certain processors. So we're gonna take a look at the brand new 5K iMac in 2019 and see whether or not this is gonna be something that Apple's gonna be having to regret and apologize for in the future, or if this is a big success for Apple. So in March, Apple unexpectedly dropped these new updated iMacs in our laps. And what we have here is the most powerful version, the Core i9. That's an 8-core processor put into this iMac. And I know what you're thinking when you look at it. It doesn't really look all that new. It doesn't really look any different than any other iMac. And you would be right, because as far as the appearance goes and the design goes, it is identical to the 2017 version, and even going back further than that. So you shouldn't expect anything new in terms of design here, but what is new are the components inside. But in putting in all these new powerful components, they haven't done anything on the exterior to make it, thicker or bigger to compensate for that. So what you're looking at is exactly the same chassis, and that means it is still really thin. I mean, when you turn it and look at it on the side, it gets to a really thin point, and that just kind of shows you how ahead of the game this design was when it was first launched. It still looks pretty modern, but I gotta point out some of the really big things that you get right when you look at it, which are these bezels that go around the sides. Like, these are really chunky bezels. They would have been chunky a couple years ago, but in 2019, this is not a good look for Apple, who's a company that's known for kind of leading the edge in terms of design and sleekness, and this is just not the kind of product you would see in 2019 if it was designed here. And as a whole, we're a little disappointed that Apple hasn't taken the time to give Mac users what they really want in terms of a redesign of the iMac entirely. So all the problems that we had with the iMac in 2017, you're gonna see them here. And it's the bezels, it's the stand, which even though it's really well built and still fully made out of aluminum, you're pretty limited in terms of adjustability. You just gotta tilt like this. There's no height adjustment or anything like that. So some of those things that we expect to see in a modern computer in 2019 are just missing on the iMac, because this is just a simple spec update, and we wish Apple would have done a full redesign. And that's true with some of the stuff happening in the back of the chassis as well. Same exact port selection, the same little lid that you get that gives you access to your DIMM slot so you can swap out the RAM or upgrade it if you want to. It's all still the same there. Now, what that means is it's not outdated ports for maybe any other PC maker, but for Apple, this is a little behind, because you only get 2 USB Thunderbolt 3 ports, which again, that would be pretty normal for any other computer. But for Apple, we're expecting more from that, because the Mac Mini has 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, the iMac Pro obviously has 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports. So I think, again, if Apple would have made this device, this computer in 2019, there would probably be 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports. One other thing you'll notice if you look at the back is the ventilation seems the same as it was on the old iMac, as opposed to the new iMac Pro, which has a different cooling system. You might be wondering, can this computer handle the Core i9? And we're gonna get into that, but the actual cooling system here on this 5K iMac is identical to the previous one. So even though you have a brand new monster 8-core chip in there, it has just a single fan. And we definitely had our curiosity about whether or not this computer could actually handle a chip like the Core i9. And to our surprise, we're happy to say that the Core i9 adds a lot to this computer, and the iMac actually handles it really well. So let's talk about this Core i9 processor that is in the new iMac. Basically, this is a really powerful 8-core processor that is showing up in mostly gaming desktops these days. Big old towers that have a ton of fan and pushing a bunch of heat around. That's what makes the implementation in this iMac that much more interesting and that much more impressive, honestly. Like I said, same cooling system, and yet somehow Apple has engineered the way it's handling the heat to actually be able to maximize a lot of the performance you're getting at. It's obviously not gonna be competitive with, it's not gonna max out at what some of these other gaming desktops can do, But even just in terms of pure like Geekbench results, single core, multi-core, this thing is right up there with the Origin Millennium or some of the other big gaming desktops. And that is just kind of mind-blowing when you consider that they've stuffed all those components into just such a small chassis with not a lot of air ventilation. Even beyond just benchmarking, when you get into real life use cases, the Core i9 iMac really is powerful. We put it through our standard 4K video encoding test in Handbrake, and to our surprise, it performed 30 seconds faster than the Alienware Area 51 we reviewed last year, which had another Core i9 chip in it, but that's an 18-core processor that we reviewed. And this thing did it 30 seconds faster, which is kind of mind-blowing. It just shows you how much these Intel chips have grown in efficiency and performance in just a year or two. We also wanted to check it out for video editing because you know this is a popular choice for editors who are going to be using Premiere or Final Cut. So we wanted to see how this thing would do against other popular choices like the MacBook Pro, 15-inch MacBook Pro, or older iMacs. And the results, again, were really impressive. We tested the same 2-minute 4K video render in Premiere on that 2017 MacBook Pro with a Core i7 processor. No surprise, this thing does it well over twice as fast. We also tested it against a 2017 quad-core Core i5 iMac, and again, no surprise, but this thing beat it by 5 minutes in that same render test. And that might not seem like a lot, but we were only working with a 2-minute clip there. You can only imagine how much time you're gonna save if you're working with a large, like 30-minute clip. So we haven't tested the Core i7 version of this new iMac, which is a 6-core processor now, so you should see a significant boost there. But we also haven't tested it against the iMac Pro, which at the bottom level comes with an 8-core processor as well. But we do think this is gonna hold up pretty well, and it's significantly cheaper when you compare the two apples for apples. So I think it's gonna be a good alternative to that hyper expensive iMac Pro. One thing you do have to be careful about with this iMac are the configurations on Apple's website, because if you just go with the standards, you're gonna get kind of screwed, especially if you're looking for power. Definitely go for that SSD upgrade over the Fusion drive. Can't believe that Apple's still selling a mechanical hard drive in supposedly powerful computers. But yeah, definitely go for the SSD, and if you wanna get that extra RAM up to 16 gigs, that's probably a good idea too. But the real question is, does the Core i9 iMac throttle in the same way that the MacBook Pro did last year with its Core i9 implementation? And everything from what we've seen in our tests so far indicates that's not true. It actually handles it really well. In our heaviest test and in the middle of our video renders, we were paying close attention to how this thing was performing and whether or not it was throttling the performance. And to our surprise, it really sat at a nice level, sat right around 3.7, 3.8 gigahertz, which is right where we want to see it. It does have a turbo boost clock of 5 gigahertz according to Apple. We didn't ever see it quite get up to there, but we did see it spike up to the 4.8, 4.9 range, and that is a really good sign for the thermals on this iMac. So the iMac also got updates to the graphics cards, and the top of the line now has a Radeon Vega 48, and the version we have here is the one step down from there, the Radeon Pro 580X, which is also an upgrade over the 580, what was in the previous iMac. It's a pretty small upgrade as far as we can tell, but the problem with that Vega 48, it's a whopping $450 price increase, which I just don't think that card is gonna be worth it for most people. So we wanted to test this 580X, and we tested it in some games. Obviously this has a lot to do with the video editing and the other tests we put it through. It does okay in games. Obviously this is not a gaming machine. It's never meant to be sold that way. But if you wanna play Fortnite, it can totally play it at 1080p, especially if you lower the settings down a little bit, you'll get some smooth frame rates there. It's about on par from what we can tell with like a GTX 1050 Ti to 1060 range. Somewhere in there is where the best comparison might be. So obviously, again, not a gaming machine, but if you want to play Fortnite on the side, you can do that. So while the performance is really impressive with this new iMac, I just can't help but feel a little bit like this was a missed opportunity for Apple to reinvest in the Mac community. I mean, do I have to talk about these peripherals? Because I mean, we all know how horrible this mouse is and impractical it is. And as far as this keyboard goes, like the iMac still doesn't have biometric authentication. Face ID, Touch ID, it's all technology that Apple has, and yet we can't just get a keyboard with Touch ID in it or a new camera with Face ID in it. I mean, that would just be so much to make this iMac feel like a new modern product. It would make Mac users out there feel like they had some attention put their way, but instead, this is in terms of design, this is as small an update as Apple could possibly push out, and I just can't help but feel a little disappointed by that. So, should you buy this thing? Well, I'm pretty happy that I can actually go out and recommend that video editors and photographers out there, anybody who likes the Mac ecosystem and wants this amazing 5K display with that really precise color accuracy, I'm happy I can actually recommend something to you that's not an iMac Pro that costs way too much and uses all those workstation components, but just a really solid iMac that is really, really powerful. So as much as this doesn't look like a computer that was designed in 2019, the good news is it actually does perform like it was. Hey, thanks for checking out our review of the new iMac. Let us know what you think about this computer. Is it something you're interested in picking up? Let us know in the comments. And while you're here, hit like and hit subscribe for more videos from Digital Trends.